President Trump's trade war with China is taking a heavy toll on the twin ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. The ports are facing major logistical disruptions, and there are worries that things are only going to get worse. The reason? The president's steep tariffs on $250 billion in Chinese goods. And now he's threatening to tax an additional $300 billion in imports. LA Times economy and labor reporter Margot Roosevelt took a close look at the big snafus at the ports. Hi, Margot. Before we talk about the tariffs, let's set the stage for people. I don't know that everyone has an idea of just how massive the economic impact is from the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach.
It's true. You know, I think when people around the country think of Los Angeles, they think of Hollywood. They have no idea about how massive the logistics economy is here. We're talking about 500 billion worth of goods move through the ports of Los Angeles every year. And then they get onto trucks and they get onto trains and they go to warehouses and they get sent around the country. And many manufacturing firms depend on the ports of Los Angeles. They import components from overseas, they export their own products. So there's just this huge economy here in which 1 out of 9 jobs in this 5-county region depend on the port.
It's almost half of the container traffic between the U.S. and China, right?
It is, that's right. When you talk about Trump's China trade, this is ground zero.
And not just jobs like the 10,000 dock workers. We're talking about truck drivers, we're talking about warehouse workers, we're talking about people who manipulate the computers that keep track of all this stuff, right? I mean, there's a million jobs at stake.
Imagine if you are an importer and Trump has slapped 25% tariffs on the goods that you want to import. Obviously, you're going to say, I'm going to import them from other countries, or I'm going to import less. And if you import less, then there are going to be fewer truck drivers, there are going to be fewer dock workers.
Or another thing that's happening is that people were trying to get ahead, right? They were trying to kind of stockpile some inventory before the tariffs took effect. You spoke with one woman who has a tile company. Explain what this looks like to her.
When Trump originally threatened to put the tariffs on, he originally put 10% tariffs on $200 billion, and then he threatened he was going to increase it to 25%. So people just went nuts. They just said, oh my God, I'm going to double my orders for whatever it is, whether they were importing computers, whether they were importing clothes, sneakers. This lady was importing tiles. So she increased her imports from China. And when she did, everybody else was doing it at the same time. So they piled up. All these containers piled up on the docks of Long Beach, and she couldn't get her goods out in time, and the terminal charged her tens of thousands of dollars for not getting her goods out on time, even though it wasn't her fault.
You can literally see these things stacked up. What are they normally stacked to, and what are you seeing right now?
Well, usually they were stacked, normally maybe 3 to 4 containers high. At the peak of when people had doubled, you know, their orders, they were going as high as 7. So you're coming in there with your truck and you're trying to get your container out from the bottom of the pile, right? You have to take off 6 containers and stack them up.
It's a nightmare.
And then find. I talked to an auto parts consultant. His client, they even lost his containers. They couldn't even find them for months. Between January and November, they couldn't find his 15 containers.
And because they had overstayed what they were intended to stay in the warehouse, he ended up having to pay late fees on the lost items as well. And not only that, in your piece, you talk about the cost of shipping a container doubled from $1,000 to $2,000, just like that, because, hey, supply and demand.
Exactly. So even though you're an importer sitting in Los Angeles and you have a contract with a shipping company that says they're going to charge you $1,000 per container, they weren't respecting the contracts because they had so much inventory coming across that if you weren't going to pay more, well, gee, your container's going to sit there on the docks in China and it's not going to come in
And
to
it's
LA.
not only those costs that we've just mentioned, there are other sort of unseen costs that never occurred to me until I read your piece, like the marketing materials that this woman says she's going to have to get rid of because now she won't be able to get this particular product, and she printed, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of materials, and that goes in the trash.
It affects every kind of company, big, small, medium. These tariffs of Trump's, China has retaliated with tariffs against our products. So exporters, people who are manufacturing stuff in California and across the country, and really were looking towards China as being this huge, delicious, open market, now they're faced with tariffs, and China's not buying as much stuff from them. So California manufacturers are suffering from this.
And the other people who are going to take it on the chin on this one, consumers. We're all going to pay more.
When it was just 10%, a lot of companies were saying, well, you know, I can eat some of this, or I can make my China, you know, manufacturer charge me a little less.
Not 30%.
But not the 25%. That is the
or
real
more.
killer. And
Yeah.
now in July, if this goes forward, what Trump has said, he's going to put tariffs on another $300 billion. So that's basically everything that comes from China. I mean, everything that you see in Target and Walmart and everything you're buying through Amazon, almost, there's just so much stuff that we have that comes from China, and there's no way the price wouldn't be going up.
And again, like you said, our ports right here, ground zero. Thanks, Margot.